Larodar is either the 5th or 6th boss of Amirdrassil and has 2 phases. For prep you want to use Lust on phase 2 and loosely stack around the boss. In phase 1 the boss has a huge number of abilities, but I'm going to wrap them up into a single mechanic to make it easier to understand. Firstly, there is a tank ability called Furious Charge. The boss charges in a line until hitting his target. The charge damage drops off with distance travelled, so tanks, you need to make sure that you run away and gain some distance. Next there is Burning Ground around the room that spawns from various other mechanics. Shortly we'll talk about how to remove this. Then we have a cast called Blazing Thorns, which spawns swirlies in this pattern. Make sure you're dodging the swirlies, but also picking up these blazing orbs that increase your crit chance by 20%. You need to make sure that these orbs do not reach the boss, or else they will increase the boss's fire damage dealt, which trust me, you don't want to happen. Now onto the main mechanic of the boss, which you must deal with or else you will wipe. Firstly, some treants will spawn which you need to kill, then you will need to heal them up. After they've been healed, they will run to the center of the room and activate a seed. Players can then interact with the seed and start dousing fires, but also more importantly, douse these scorching roots. You must make sure that you're dousing these roots to make them attackable and then kill these roots off as soon as possible. And finally, once the roots have been killed, you then need to heal them back up to life to spawn in a barrier which reduces damage from our final mechanic of this phase, Raging Inferno. This cast does massive damage and will kill you if you're not standing in the barrier. To recap this sequence quickly, you want to kill the treants, then heal the treants back up. You then want to click the seed in the middle of the room. You then want to douse fires and the roots. You then want to kill off these roots and then heal the roots back up to full life again to gain access to this barrier. Super simple, right? After casting the Raging Inferno ability 3 times or reaching 35% HP, the boss will enter a transition phase doing massive AoE damage before entering phase 2. Make sure that using defensives here and also healers are prepared to get through this, as honestly it hurts. In phase 2 the boss gets much simpler, but it is a race against time as the boss pulses AoE damage that stacks. This means you want to kill the boss as soon as possible, and is the reason I suggest saving Lust for phase 2. First let's talk about Ashen Treants. They spawn in around the room and then leave fire pools wherever they walk. You need to kill these off quickly because you cannot remove fires in this phase, so anything that they leave behind will be a permanent loss of boss space and make the fight much harder. Next let's talk about the tank ability in this phase. Smoldering Backdraft causes damage and stops all incoming healing to the target. Tanks need to swap as soon as the cast is finished, and the player with the debuff should go and stand in melee because the debuff allows you to siphon life from others. We also have random tornadoes spawning in this phase, make sure you're dodging them, and next we have the healing mechanic for this phase, Flash Fire. This adds a healing absorb to random players which needs to be healed up within 8 seconds or else the player will be stunned and die. DPS players, this is a great spot to use your healing potions or health stones to help out the healers. And finally for this phase we have a series of soaks which will be spawning in around the room. You need to make sure that you soak these or else you will likely wipe because they contribute to the ramping damage. That's it for this boss though. Just make sure you're set up in phase 1 to spawn in that barrier by assigning someone to interact with the seed, then send Lust in phase 2, make sure you're standing in Stokes and you will smash this boss. As always I want to give a huge shout out to my few patrons, you really do mean a lot to me, thank you so much. If you'd also like to potentially support me beyond a thumbs up and a subscribe, you can head on over to Patreon to check out what I offer in return. These guides are released early for example, so that might be of interest. Having said that, I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, then we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.